attention to the difference in ideology between you and...
Ideology doesn't come into this, you know. No, there aren't two points of view about the racial question. There can't be. We're all equal and human beings, and that's the end of it.
Oh, please, I'm not stirring up controversy, merely clarifying attitudes as far as possible. Now, to put it crudely, the first reaction of your mother and your brother Bernard was to get Raoul Lapointe out of the family, whereas your first reaction was to get him in.
Very well, but what does that prove?
Why, simply that your judgments throughout are likely to be influenced by that basic approach. Furthermore, this conversation that you overheard in the library, what conclusions exactly do you expect us here today to draw from that?
Conclusions?
Yes. You see, it's been shown that the birth certificate before the court is a forgery. Now, the really relevant question is who perpetrated the forgery. Are you suggesting that your mother, Lady Dorothy, and your brother Bernard did?
I'm merely reporting what I heard. It certainly indicates some sort of plot afoot, I should have thought.
But a nefarious plot, Miss Crittenden. You see, when we consider the actual words that you report, they only seem to say that Bernard had asked for Raoul Lapointe's certificates again, possibly to examine them a little more closely, that both he and your mother still seemed to think that Lapointe was a fraud, and that Lady Dorothy was nervous.
There's also the remark about Raoul getting money so that they could get him on a charge in the end, isn't there? That's hardly so innocent.
Well, obviously, if Lapointe was a fraud, then criminal charges would follow. On the other hand, if he had established himself as genuine, then no one could complain that money had been withheld.
You're twisting everything to suit your own case now.
Just as you, Miss Crittenden, are twisting everything to suit your ideology. Now, why is it, if it's not sheer awkward-mindedness, that you state so categorically that Raoul Lapointe is your half-brother?
He had attitudes, ways that reminded me of my father right from the start. And then he seemed to know so much. About the scar my father carried on his leg and how it got there, his birthmark and so on.
Well, surely those would not be difficult things for a confidence trickster to find out?
They'd have been rather hard for him, in my view. But then there were other things that only I knew about my father, and Raoul seemed to know about them too.
Really, Miss Crittenden, what sort of other things?
Well, I've got to go back a bit. You see, in the 12 months or so preceding his death, I got to know my father in a new way. He began to talk to me, really talk about his life. And he talked in particular about the Congo and about his marriage to Marie Cavallo. That wasn't the way I thought it had been, the way anybody thought. It was love, true love. He wasn't as sick as they all tried to make out afterwards. He told me, in fact, that loving Marie had been like a shaft of light in his life. And he had a favorite name for her, a term of endearment that's actually the name for a bright red flower in Katanga. And when I first met Raoul, I asked him if he knew what Tom Crittenden called his wife Marie, and he said at once, Casadula Umbwe.
Casadula Umbwe. That's the name of the flower?
Yes.
And you believed, you, Miss Crittenden, that no one else but yourself and Marie Cavallo's son would have known that?
I'm sure no one else knew of it. My father told me that he'd never told anybody else about it in his whole life.
Miss Crittenden, if your father was being so frank with you in these discussions he had in the last days of his life, then presumably he did tell you about the existence of Marie Cavallo's child, that his name was Lapointe.
Well, you see, when it came to things like that...
Did he tell you or did he not?
No, he didn't. But I...
Now, here's a remarkable thing. A man talking to his daughter about his early life mentions something as remote as the pet name by which he called his first wife, and yet doesn't mention that she conceived and bore him a child.
Perhaps he would have told me in time. He had a guilty conscience about it. I believe now he thought the time wasn't right to confide in me.
No further questions, my lord.
Mr. Hardesty, is something the matter?
My lord, I've just received news which is of the utmost importance to this trial. It seems that the old missionary, Van Helm, is still alive. He lives in retirement in Belgium, but we have contacted him and we hope he'll be in court tomorrow.
Mr. Hardesty, are you ready to proceed now?
Yes, my lord, I'm happy to say my next witness is in court. I call the Reverend Auguste Van Helm.
Reverend Auguste Van Helm, please.
Auguste Van Helm, Baptist minister and missionary, presently of Charleroi, Belgium.
Yes, this is my name, Van Helm.
One moment, please, Mr. Hardesty. Perhaps Mr. Van Helm would care to sit while he gives his evidence. Nurse, would you...
No. I will not sit. A man should stand while he has his legs still yet. No. Van Helm will stand.
Mr. Van Helm, until it was destroyed by rioters, were you in charge of the mission and hospital at Sampwe in Katanga?
Sampwe, yes, I remember Sampwe. 25, 30 years I am in Sampwe. Then there is trouble, fighting. Sampwe is burned.
Yes, terrible time for you, as we all know. But during that time there, did you by any chance know the accused in this case, Raoul Lapointe?
Raoul Lapointe? Oh, il y en a un grand brouillard devant les yeux. C'est impossible de voir clairement avec assurance.
Nurse, what is he saying, please?
Il a said, Monsieur Van Helm suffers very much with the eyes. He can no longer see the persons or the objects, only quite close.
Well, I see. Well, in that case, Mr. Harvester, I think it would be quite suitable if the accused were to leave the dock and approach the witness.
I'm obliged, my lord.
Do you remember Raoul Lapointe at Sampwe, Mr. Van Helm?
No, Sampwe, no, yes, it was at the school. The school. Oh, this is very sad. The school and the hospital, too. There was most good. Why then did they burn them?
Can you identify this man for us, please, Mr. Van Helm?
Identify Raoul. Raoul, c'est vrai, évidemment. C'est Raoul. Oh, comme vous êtes grand maintenant.
Je suis bien heureux de vous rencontrer encore.
C'est incroyable.
Oh, monsieur, c'est moi, Raoul.
This is unquestionably Raoul Lapointe, whom you educated at the mission at Sampwe. Is it, Mr. Van Helm? There can be no possibility of a mistake.
But of course this is Raoul, Monsieur le Juge. I know Raoul well.
Can you tell us anything concerning his parentage?
Comment?
Did you know his father?
The father.
Yes, exactly. Was his name Lapointe, the same as his son's, or was it something different? Can you tell us? My lord, perhaps it would be easier for Mr. Van Helm, first of all, to recall Raoul Lapointe's mother. After all, she did work as a nurse at the mission hospital. Mr. Van Helm can hardly have forgotten Marie Caballo.
With respect, my lord, I really must object. The counsel for the defense is virtually putting the answers in the witness's mouth.
My learned friend might appreciate that Mr. Van Helm is a man greatly advanced in years, having difficulty with his memory. I'm merely wishing to assist him just a little.
My lord, there is a profound difference between jogging the witness's memory and instructing him in things which he can hardly have forgotten.
Thank you both. That will do. Your objection is noted, Miss Tate. But there are certain issues which must be cleared up in this case if humanly possible, and it is my feeling that a certain latitude must be tolerated. Now, Mr. Van Helm, do you remember a marriage that you witnessed in Sampwe in 1946 between Marie Caballo and Thomas Crittenden, an Englishman?
Marie Caballo.
Well, now, we have here a certificate of marriage. Usher, would you? Your signature is on it, so presumed it is the one issued by you. Perhaps seeing it will help you.
Merci, monsieur.
It was a marriage between a white man and a colored woman, if that is of any help to you. You cannot have solemnized many such marriages during the course of your ministry.
Marie Caballo. Ah, c'était triste. La pauvre Marie.
You recall the marriage, Mr. Van Helm?
Marie, so young, so brave. She was poor Marie. Poor Marie.
Now, Mr. Van Helm, my next question is of the first importance. Was there a child of that marriage between Marie Caballo and Thomas Crittenden?
Poor Marie, she was alone. It was the end for her then. Yes, the tribe would not have her back now she had married to a white man. It was the end for her. Poor Marie. Poor Marie.
Now, please, I will put the question again. Was there a child of that marriage?
A child?
You are saying yes? Yes, that there was a child.
What is this you are saying to me about a child? Do you not know, monsieur, that all the children in Sampwe are dead? Dead. The fire took them. The fire, or the knives of all those devils.
Mr. Van Helm,
But it was terrible. And the children, there was nothing I could do for them, monsieur. Do you not know that their blood ran down upon my clothes, their cries fell and rang in my head, and I could only run away. My legs carried me many days into the bush. But why? Why did you not know? Did you not know that we only wanted to do good to you and your people? How could you give us back such evil?
Yes, I think perhaps you'd better.
Oh, black men, white men, I never cared for such things. And the children. Oh, les pauvres petits. Les petits enfants.
Members of the jury, that we can only conclude that Mr. August Van Helm will not be able to assist us. That means that we are still without positive identification of the accused as the son of the late Sir Thomas Crittenden. And Mr. Lapointe, you may return to the dock.
The case for the defense, my lord.
State, are you pursuing the suggestion that the accused obtained money by deception? To do so, the evidence must be that someone paid money over because they were deceived.
My lord, I think I'm prepared to accept that neither Lady Dorothy nor her son nor Mr. Bowers believe the story. But it is still open for me to press, and I do press the charge of attempting to obtain property by deception.
Very well, Miss Tate. I think you're right to drop the full charge.
I'm obliged, my lord. Members of the jury, there are two questions for you to consider in this case. Firstly, is Raoul Lapointe the son of Sir Thomas Crittenden? Or did he genuinely believe himself to be such when against him? Now, a vital matter in this case, members of the jury, is the birth certificate. Mr. Bowers has testified that the document in court is the one shown to him by Mr. Lapointe. Mr. Mbulla tells us that he remembers no distinguishing marks when he saw it. But Mr. Lapointe suggests that Lady Dorothy Crittenden and her son have gone to the trouble of forming an elaborate forgery and introduced this supposedly new forgery to the court today. However, if what Mr. Lapointe says is true, then throughout his life, Sir Thomas Crittenden must have been a venal, sanctimonious hypocrite who fathered a child in his early marriage, fobbed off all responsibility with a payment, very small by his standards, to the mother, refused the child his name, never mentioned him to his second wife or daughter, and yet conveniently left a loophole in the will for a claim by describing his children as living, legitimate offspring. Is it not convenient, members of the jury, that Mr. Lapointe came to England to seek his father at the precise time that that will, with the particular phrasing, living, legitimate offspring, was so well publicized? It is my submission, members of the jury, that Raoul Lapointe was a boy from the mission school at Sampuey, but not the son of Sir Thomas Crittenden, and as such is guilty of the charge against him.
Members of the jury, my learned friend asks if you can really believe that Lady Dorothy Crittenden and her son Bernard have entered into an elaborate conspiracy against the accused. Well, I will not shrink from that suggestion. Indeed, I submit it is most obvious and justified. Firstly, the Zaire authorities in Kinshasa issued a passport to Raoul Lapointe on the evidence of his birth certificate. The Zaire legation authorities in London pronounced that same certificate to be genuine. Now it appears that same certificate is a forgery. Yet I invite you to consider that it was Mr. Bernard Crittenden who so dramatically discovered that fact. How remarkable and how convenient. Unhappily, Mr. Van Helm was unable to offer the positive identification of Raoul Lapointe, which the defense had hoped for. But you'll remember, on the other hand, that he was not unfamiliar with the name Lapointe. If, as the prosecution has suggested, Mr. Van Helm today simply recognized an orphan boy from his old mission, then how did that boy come by the name of Lapointe? Lapointe, which is the maiden name of Sir Tom Crittenden's mother. Let us not cry coincidence. No, ladies and gentlemen, the man you see in the dock today is the man that he believes himself to be. The son of Sir Tom Crittenden by his early marriage. He therefore committed no crime when he sought money from his father's estate, as was his right so to do. He is not guilty, and I ask you to record that fact with your verdict.
Now, members of the jury, I must remind you that the burden of proof rests with the prosecution, and they must therefore prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the accused's representation to be the son of the late Thomas Crittenden was false, and that the accused knew it to be false. You've heard that the prosecution have dropped the full charge of obtaining money by deception, because none of the prosecution witnesses said that they relied upon the representation when paying the money over. So the only charge is of attempting to obtain money by deception. Now, members of the jury, will you kindly retire and consider your verdict?
All stand. Jury, will you